Hi guys! So today I'm going to talk about all of the books that I managed to read in the month of May, right? Yeah, May is over now. So yeah, let's talk about all the books I read. Okay, first off, I'll show you all of the books that I planned on reading. These are only the books that I really wanted to get to, not all the books on my May reading list. There's a video if you're curious about the other books, but yeah, these are all the books I wanted to read, and since I only read 10 books in May, I didn't get to every single book, unfortunately, but that's okay. I always aim high, and I'm not really disappointed if I don't read every single book that I wanted to read. There's always the next month to get to the books. Yeah, so let's see which books I read from this list and which ones I just randomly picked up, which weren't on my radar for the month, because there's always a mixture. I always have to pick something up spontaneously just so that I don't feel too pressured or too limited by my reading list. So the very first book that I finished in May was actually the one on the left. So these are the last remaining books in the School for Good and Evil series, the 5th and the 6th book. The series was always about Sophie and Agatha, the female characters that are also on the book covers. And yeah, these last books in the series were heavily based on Arthurian legend. So I'm not the biggest fan of Arthurian legends, but these books surprised me and they were actually very good, very entertaining, but they are still rather childish. Like, it is a middle grade series. Some would argue it is a young adult series, but it reads very middle grade-y to me. So if you are not up to that kind of childish humor and drama between the characters and their relationships and stuff, this may not be for you. But apart from that, everything is very entertaining. These books are always very original. Every single book has some unique element about them. I just love all these little fairy tale references in there, and the whole world building, because the world expands with every single book more and more. So that's great to see. And yeah, I don't really can tell you anything more than that without spoiling stuff. So the first books were about Sophie and Agatha attending this magical school to learn about fairy tales and magic and all that kind of stuff, while also always talking about gender and equality and differences, but also things that have to do with literature, like can you trust the written word, who's good, who's bad, is there a black and white or is there a grey area in between, and all that fun stuff. Shapeshifters, there's fae, there's werewolves in it. So I gave both of these books 3.5 out of 5 stars, which is a pretty good rating for me. I did enjoy books that are rated 3 stars and higher. There are just some minor things that I didn't vibe with. As I've already said, I'm not the biggest fan of the humor in it, and that it still stays kind of childish. And then the Arthurian stuff, if a perspective is too much about that, I'm not really interested in it. But yeah, the perspectives change. You have a lot of perspectives in these books, and I enjoyed Sophie's the most, but also when it was about, what are they called? There are 3 witches that go on a couple of journeys throughout the book, so if we ever read from their perspective, it's really interesting as well. Didn't really care for Agatha's perspective after some books, so I can't give them a high rating, but 3.5 is good, and I can recommend the series. I am glad that I've read all of these books, and I hope that the Netflix adaptation will continue, because the first season was pretty good. Again, some things I didn't like, and some things I even liked more than in the actual book. So I hope I can watch another season in the future, just to see how they adapt all the complex stuff that is going on in the later books. But yeah, enough talking about these ones, let's move on. The next book that I picked up was Immortality, a Love Story. This is the second book in the, does it have a name? Anatomy duology. So I finished another series in this month, and this one was probably the best book that I read in the whole month. So I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars, so it's almost perfection. And yeah, I enjoyed this very much. It was just as good as the first book in the series, and this just follows the journey of our main character. But yeah, it's just about her medical journey, treating patients, learning more about medicine and this illness that is going around in Scotland in the 1800s. So yeah, there's also more focus on the fantastical twist in the sequel, which I found very surprising, because there are some interesting new characters that are introduced in this book, and yeah, they brought a very humorous, quirky, and entertaining note to these books. I can't spoil it, but it was very interesting to read about them and how they are dealing with this fantastical stuff without spoiling anything. And yeah, what else is there? Oh yeah, there's also some court stuff, because our main character is treating the daughter of some king. Not sure which one right now. So that was very cool to see a different setting, which was very contrary to the first book. And yeah, this had a great ending to the duology. There's some stuff left open to the reader, but I don't mind it too much in this one. It just leaves a hopeful impression for me personally, and I can imagine the future for myself. I don't need all the answers to every single thing. The most important things are answered. It's not a open ending that will frustrate you. It's just, if you're into characters or relationships, you might not get to know everything in that regard, but in terms of plot and story, everything is revealed. Then I also finished another series. This is the last one. But yeah, I always try to finish the series that I started, so I don't have 20 plus series that I need to continue. I already have like 8 to 10, and that's way too much, because I can't read a book from every series in 1 month, which is frustrating to me personally. I easily forget characters and plots and names and whatnot, so I can't have too many series going on at the same time. So yeah, I did finish the Lockwood & Co. series. I probably would have never picked it up if it weren't for the Netflix series, which I think will not continue after the first season, but it's not too bad for me because I'm not really a fan of the books or the series. I just don't like DNFing anything, so I just watched through the whole thing, and I also read the whole series because I already had all the books, so why not? And they are very fast-paced and quick reads. You will fly through the pages. If you skip some sentences, you'll fly through them even more, like I did. Because I'm just not into ghosts, I'm not into crime, and I usually am not into very young YA stories if the setting or the plot isn't interesting to me. I think I'm the only one who is not enjoying these books. Everyone else seems to love them, so my opinion might not be the same as yours. And yeah, if you like ghosts and investigations and urban fantasy, this might be for you. And the main characters are also similar to the Harry Potter trio. The series isn't bad, it's just not for me. The writing isn't bad either. I just skipped sentences because I was just not interested in the ghost investigations, because they sometimes seem rather pointless, because they don't really have to do anything with the overall plot. It's just because it's their job, they have to do these ghost investigations, and you as a reader can read about them and see what they do on their daily basis. But yeah, they just got very repetitive very quickly, but the little glimpses at plot throughout the series were interesting enough to keep going. And in the last book, there's much more plot in it than in the other books, so that was great. I finally got some answers to questions that I asked myself from the first book and onwards. So yeah, it took a lot of time to get some answers, but I did get them. But yeah, there's still the big question remaining, why there are even ghosts in London. But that's okay, I guess. I don't know. I would have wished to know more about that. But yeah, the focus is just on the relationships and the ghost investigations, really. You can't always enjoy every single book that you read. It just happens. It's what it is. Whatever. Let's just move on. So this is the next book that I read. It's also middle grade. Wow. The month of May was just full of sequels and middle grade books. And I still only read 10 books, which is a shame, but yeah. It's alright. I will have more time in June, hopefully, so that I can read some more books. And yeah, this is well, it's not really non-fiction, but it reads like a non-fiction book. It's all about mermaids, and there is some historical stuff about them that is based on myths and legends all around the world, but there are also some fantastical stuff that the author just came up with, which I would love to read more about in fiction books. So yeah, I don't really give it away, but like certain abilities mermaids could have, or how they adapt to different climates and stuff. This book is also heavily illustrated, just to make it more fun for children to read, and there's also a tiny plot in there to explain how all of the research is put into a book that reads like non-fiction, because there is a woman in the past, I don't know when, 1800s, 1900s, I don't know, who is going on a ship and traveling with a crew, to research mermaids, and she writes about these things that she supposedly found out and did illustrations and stuff. So yeah, you read about this plot from time to time as well. And yeah, it was very, very cute. It's also a series about different things like witchcraft, and there's also a handbook about, what was the other topic? Fae, right? And I think there will be a fourth one translated into German as well. I'm not sure what it was about, maybe dragons or stuff? I don't know. But this one was the best so far, in my opinion. But that's because I enjoy the topic of mermaids much more than the other topics. And I learned a lot more in this one, or should I say, read more stuff that I haven't read before, because learning about mermaids is a difficult thing to say if it's not really a real thing. But yeah, it was really cute, very cute illustrations and stuff. A very amazing cover as well. Love that one. It's also holographic, as you can see. And that's just what it looks like from the inside. Just a couple of impressions. So the next book that I read, this is the 4.5th book in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I've read the whole series, and it was quite difficult at the start to get into the writing style if you've read the whole series in a different language. But yeah, I got used to it fairly quickly, and it was very different actually from all of the other books in the Dark Tower series, because this is essentially about 3 different stories, although one of them isn't really a story, it's just there to function as a basis to talk about the other stories, because they're always connected. It's like pulling out these Russian dolls from each other. So you start with the first layer, which is about our well-known group with the gunslinger and Jack and so on, and they have to reside in some kind of cabin, I don't remember, because there's a big storm outside, and Roland just starts talking about a story from his past when he was, I don't know, a teenager, and he was on his first real mission, I believe, to find out what happened to some murders that took place in a town, and there was supposedly a shapeshifter killing other people, so he has to investigate, find out what is happening there. This is the second story, because now we read about it as if we're in it as well. And yeah, it's also about Roland's parents in there, a little bit about his father, but mostly about his mother as well, which was really interesting to me. And this shapeshifter was interesting as well. Didn't care for the actual investigation part. Again, I'm not into crime, so I didn't really care about that. But yeah, it was nice to see some of his past. And then while investigating, this young Roland tells someone another story, and this is the third layer now, and he is telling this other guy about a fairy tale that exists in this fictional world. And yeah, this fairy tale was actually the best part of the book, but it wasn't mind-blowing. I had way too high expectations because I've heard that this book is, for some, even better than the actual book series. So I thought I'd love this book much more than I actually did. But yeah, the fairy tale parts were interesting. It was a nice story about a young boy who is traveling into these dangerous woods where no one really wants to be, because there's monsters in there and dragons and stuff. And yeah, he's trying to find something for his mum. And yeah, it's also about magic in there. There's a wand in there that reminded me of Harry Potter for a brief second, but it's not really like Harry Potter, it's just this one tiny moment. And there's also our beloved villain RF in there, which was very cool. So yeah, just a typical fairy tale-esque story. And then when this story ended, we came back to Roland's past and how he solved the crime. And then at the end, we also get back to this first layer of storytelling where Roland and his quartet are in this cabin or whatever, and the storm has ended now and they can move on with their journey. So yeah, I love this kind of storytelling. Cloud Atlas is very similar to it, and yeah, I wish more books had this concept in it. It's much more interesting than just a normal story from beginning to end. And yeah, I'm glad I read it, for sure. I did rate it highly because I did enjoy it. There was just some minor things in it that didn't really vibe with me, and I again had way too high expectations going into it. I can recommend it if you think that anything about what I just said sounds even slightly interesting. In this fairy tale story about this young boy, there's also a section that is referencing the Chronicles of Narnia, which was so cool. I think that was the best part for me, apart from the magic and the wand stuff and Arf, the villainous character. And I just love if other books are loosely connected to other ones. That's why I love the Dark Tower series. All in all, there are some books in it that I didn't enjoy as much, but the overall concept is so cool, creating this multiverse of different worlds and stories and connections to other books, be it by Stephen King or just other authors. I think that's so fascinating. So I just had to tell you about the Chronicles of Narnia reference. And the next book, which is also the last physical book that I read in May, was this one, King Midas and the Golden Touch by Charlotte Croft and K.Y. Croft. And this is just a very short retelling of the well-known King Midas myth, but it's also heavily illustrated, and that's the reason why I got it. They add so much more to the book itself. So yeah, very detailed. Even the chapter initials are matching the content in the story, because they start out very colorful and then they get more and more golden. So that was a nice little detail in there. And yet they are all in color and they are full page. So if you can get your hands on this copy and you're interested in King Midas, I highly recommend this one. And yeah, the retelling itself was nice as well. It's just your typical retelling that you know of King Midas. I just love to read about any kind of mythology from time to time, so I don't mind rereading stuff that I already know. And then the two remaining books that I read are digital copies. One of them I've read online and the other on my Kindle, because it was on Kindle Unlimited, and if a book is on there and I find out about it, I will want to read it there. So yeah, the first book was a manga called Starving Anonymous. I found out about it on a Discord server because someone talked about it. Never seen it anywhere else, which is a shame because it was really good if you're into extreme horror, that is, and you don't mind body horror or just disgusting stuff in general. Then this is maybe a book for you. So this is the first volume of a longer series. And yeah, the book is about a young man who was on a bus with a friend, and then all the people in the bus collapse, including the driver, and the main character is waking up to find himself in some kind of facility where he can't escape. And yeah, he just finds out about all the disgusting stuff that is happening there. And yeah, it's very fast-paced, it's very much about the shock factor and not a lot about the plot. There is some plot in it and it's really interesting. I hope there will be more in the future and not just the disgusting stuff, although I did enjoy that as well. But yeah, in some parts it wasn't too original, and I've read about it in other books before. But I don't want to say anything to discourage you to pick this up because it was good. There's also a fantastical twist with a very interesting monster, or should I say monsters. I think there's different ones in there, so that was cool. And if you enjoy anything like, I don't know, Saw and The Cube, it's similar to that, but it's not like a escape room. You don't have to solve riddles or something like that to get out. It's just stringing together different rooms where different horrific stuff happens and trying to get out alive. There's also some science fiction in it, so yeah, I can only recommend it. I think it's a very, very underrated book. More people should talk about it. And yeah, I will pick up the next volume in June for sure. I need to know what happens next. And yeah, the characters are interesting. Some of them are a little weird. I think it's supposed to be humorous, but yeah, it's not realistic, to say the least, how some of them are acting. But yeah, the main character is just as confused as the reader. And yeah, it's just a great journey following him through these different rooms. I unfortunately cannot show you any of the art style in it, but I'm rather picky with art styles, and I think this art style was very good, and it shows the horrific stuff very well. There is not a lot of text in there, so that you can focus on the pictures and see all of the horror stuff. And yeah, there's very good atmosphere. So yeah, I really like it. It's not a 5-star book. I think I gave it 4 stars, just because it was a bit too fast-paced, but that's not the author's fault. It's just because it's a manga. I don't read them too often, so I still need to get used. And then the last book was a book by a German booktuber. I just wanted to find out what this was going to be like, and this was a fantasy story, very much like the first books in the Throne of Glass series or the first books in the Mistborn series. So yeah, definitely YA and definitely high fantasy, and I was glad that I read it, but I don't think that I will continue on with this series. I don't want to go too in depth about it because 1, it's only in German, and 2, I don't really want to say too negative things about a booktuber's book. and yeah, I just don't think that I'm the right target audience for it. It's just about taste in that regard. The writing wasn't bad, and there's also, like in Mistborn, these phrases at the beginning of every chapter that are from the fantasy world, but it wasn't really connected to the plot in a major way, so I was just confused why they are always there, and I was just missing some more complex stuff, and there was just not that much fantasy in there as I was hoping. I'm not a fan of books where there's no magic anymore, but there was in the past, and now no one is really using magic and there are no fantastical creatures anymore, so most of the time I'm not a fan of that. Game of Thrones is similar to it, but I somehow love the series, maybe for its complexity, maybe because of its many interesting perspectives. I don't know, but it worked, and that one didn't work in this series, unfortunately. But yeah, it's not a bad book per se, it's just not for me again, similar to Lockwood. I very much liked how the book began. It was set in this rural area, and there was this forbidden magic, but she still uses it. There's a panther as her animal companion, which was cool. There were some rituals and so on, so great atmosphere, great interesting ideas. But then after 100-ish pages, nothing new happened for me, and I didn't like any of the characters really. So there just wasn't anything that was interesting to me. But I'm sure other people would love this book for what it is, and I'm sure the series will evolve in the future, maybe get more complex. But yeah, I'm just not a fan of character-focused stories if there's not an interesting plot in there, or if I don't like any of the characters. And yeah, I'm not into character development. I don't care about it. I don't care about characters evolving from being shitty to being the most awesome character ever. So I think this book is somewhat focusing on that a lot. And yeah, the villain in the book just wasn't very villainous. I don't know, they didn't feel very dangerous or anything. So yeah, it wasn't bad, just not for me. So yeah, these are all the books that I read. I'm currently reading 2 books, but as of right now, when I'm filming, it is the 31st of May, and I don't think I will finish either of these books. I'm currently reading Ice Planet Barbarians, Barbarian Price it's called, should be book 5 in the series, and I'm only reading it when I'm outside, enjoying the sun and the good weather that we currently have. And then the other book that I'm currently reading is Treasure of the Emerald Sea, because it was part of my TBR game. I'm only 40 pages into it, so I don't think I will finish this one today either, but I'm very much enjoying that one. Only 40 pages into it. I just love it. I love the characters, I love the world, the plot's interesting enough, but yeah, the atmosphere is great, and I just got sucked into it from the very first pages, and yeah, I just love it right now. So yeah, I'm very happy about that. I was kind of worried if I will enjoy it or not, because I'm also currently still reading the Mistborn series, Era 1. I only have to read the 3rd book now, and I don't really like the trilogy, so I was just a little bit scared going into Treasure of the Emerald Sea, but fortunately I do love it. And I'm also excited about the second secret project of Brandon Sanderson's books. I haven't heard great things about it, but I think the plot sounds very interesting, and maybe, just maybe, I will enjoy it too. I'm just buying them from Dragonsteel Books right now, so I will get them when everyone else has already received the books. But so that's not a problem, I can wait. I'm patient, and I still have hundreds and hundreds of other books to read before that. So yeah, just a little update on these current reads. And that's my wrap up. I will go and film my June TBR now. So yeah, I'll see you in that video in a few days. I hope you had an amazing month of May as well in terms of reading or just life. Bye!